essence from the way. Because the thing about, I mean, obviously, I mean, we've all heard about the Simpson and the whole thing like forever, right? But I don't think I've ever been this clear on it. Maybe it's specifically because of him, maybe it's because of development, whatever it is. But the point is the same. So he's bringing this concept of Simpson, and he's saying that Simpson, in essence, is you have the world of the Ein Sof, and then Hashem separates an aspect of the Ein Sof, in essence. And a separation of the Ein Sof, when I mean separate, he doesn't remove it, but it means like he creates like a machitza, like a border, a separation between the rest of the system in the Ein Sof and then the world that we live in. And so that world that we live in is in essence, the world that we live in is in essence an expression of what we're calling the Simpson, right? And why it's an important idea. I'm just going to get ready to bring up everything on the Safari. It's an amazing idea because we learned earlier about the Torah's participation, right? And how the Torah itself is really just the blueprint of reality, right? It's the letters that form the system. Hold on, let me bring this up. The letters are basically the channels of where the light that Hashem created the spiritual universe, how it becomes manifest physically. It comes through these 22 dimensions that we call letters. And these letters, understood at our level of shapes, and these shapes, are in essence, the combination of these shapes are in essence, um, the combination of these shapes are in essence, I think this is where we ended. I think this is where we stopped. Maybe. Yeah, hold on. We just talked about this. Hold on. All right, so we'll just go to part two. To be safe, I think we did only part one. Stop. Hold on. All right, that's part one. Okay, part two. Okay, so it says like this. So it says, Ratzeh ha Ein Sof, ועזב את תלה, I'm sorry, ולתי מתקליתו, כי הנה בברו לנו. Okay, so it says like this: the Ein Sof is going off of the previous written text. The Ein Sof, blessed be He, set aside his limitations. It's already clear that the supreme will of Himself is beyond all limits. Accordingly, we must not think that He created only what He's unable to create anything more. Right? That makes sense. Capable of doing much more, but he did not want to do more. He acted in these aspects of omnipresent, potent, presence, limitless, and but with precisely the degree of power that he calculates to be perfectly suitable to accomplish the intended purpose of his action. Through in himself, he is without. Sets aside a limit. He set aside his limitlessness in order to bring about creation. We may say that the power which has departed from us. Okay, so that's interesting. So he just being clear, right? We're talking about this endless world. We're talking about these different universes, all these things. Don't think that like this is the totality of Hashem, right? He just really wants to protect us from putting any limitation on the Creator because we're understanding this particular perspective on how light force manifests. ואיש לזיווה הזאת שהטיל להורות Aleph. So he says like this, She'in Hasfirot Anin Kadesh. So he says to say that he set aside limitlessness applies firstly that the spheroids are not something new and that they are already not included in the Ein Sof. Prior to the Simsum, the spheroid already existed on the plane of limitless. And so that's an important point. So he's saying the universe that was created, again, we're talking about the Ein Sof, that whole reality. He's saying, that reality is that reality is in the limited frame, right? Because it's like I don't know, like since I've been in Israel, I mean not Israel, but since like the last I'll say like few months, I've been really into eating cereal. I don't know, it's like a thing. Captain Crunch, Frosted Flakes, not the most healthiest cereals, but I just been into it. So sometimes you have these like American like desires. You just have to eat something American, right? I'm assuming these things are from America, but I ate them in America. So the point is like this: we're talking about separating part of the bowl of the cereal, right? You have the bowl with this full of this, say, milk. I don't have dairy. I eat soy milk, right? Sweet soy milk. So I have soy milk and on top of it I have the cereal. So if I was to take a portion of the cereal and set it aside, or like I separate it in the bowl somehow, maybe that's what we're talking about here. But don't think because there's other cereal there that this is what the creator created. You have underneath that a whole bunch of liquid. And then around the liquid, you have a whole bowl. And behind both of these things, you have a human intention, right? So he's really just trying to protect us from going into a dark place of thinking something, putting any type of limitation on the creator. Prior to the Simsun of Sefirot already existed in the plane of limitless. And this is what he set aside in the Simsun. The second implication of saying that he set aside his limitlessness is that as long as the spheroids were truly subsumed in the Ein Sof, we cannot say they existed in the same way that they do now. We must say that they existed in some other way from the difference of between existence within limits and existence without limitness. This not only is one quantity, of but also of quantity. In their unlimited quality, they existed in a different way. If so, when they took on limits, they received a new quality. This is the sense in which they were in innovation through being revealed within limits. They now come into being in the way they exist now, and this is an innovation. So, so he's saying that the same way we talk about these letters, right? We talk about the letters transitioning from the place of limit. It really was giving us more correct language. Before the energy force goes through the letters, it's in a place of limitlessness. When it goes through the letter, it's in a place of finite. Yirale So there's a proof of these two inferences is that the concept of this implies that every power which afterwards defects must also exist on the plane of limitlessness without any boundaries at all. Accordingly, we must think of limited realm into existence. as being subsumed within the unlimited, and there is limits, and there is limits disappears. We may conclude of this that the pathway of limitation is included within the unlimited without boundaries. Okay, so what's being said? That was a lot, right? So he's saying this idea of being able to take energy that is undefined and transitioning it into a place of definitions. When something takes on a definition, then it's defined. Then it kind of has an identity. But before then, it doesn't have an identity, right? It's like the same idea. We've been talking so much about when we stand on Rosh Hashanah. Are we going to stand in front of Rosh Hashanah as a byproduct of the American narrative? Are we going to stand in Rosh Hashanah as B'nai Adam, B'nai Ish and Isha? We're going to stand in that way in front of Hashem, whether we're wherever we're at, right? Preferably in a congregation, but maybe people listening, they don't have a place, maybe it's not. So I don't know. I'm just saying at the end of the day, you have to hear the shofar. Whether you blow it yourself or you go to somewhere and hear it. You have to hear it. You have to at least ask your local Orthodox rabbi, but there's a certain amount of blast you have to minimum here, right? So the point is just saying that, but this idea of rethinking who we are is what we're saying. He's in the same way that the light transition to limitless to a frame of limit. It's not to say that the light doesn't have limitation, but in the frame that we're interacting, it does. Yish leha leha kashut imahu velati velakli uvikolati gedo givol imkin inu dereg mugaladel. So he says it could be objected that if the pathway of limitation exists on the level of unlimited, without limitations and boundaries, this cannot be said to the pathway of limitation. This objection may be answered if we distinguish between the kind of concept that includes another concept in the sense of affirming or maintaining its existence, and a different kind of concept that includes or involves other concepts only in the sense that it is a very opposite and it is and its negation. An example of the latter is death. The idea of death has no meaning without life, which death brings to an end. Death thus includes life in the sense that it is that is integration of life, not that it sustains life, and that it is not so in the case of life. So does not include death at all. So you have the life force of the creator, and this light force goes through this blender, through this process, this refinement, and it takes on this frame of, like, say, a particular expression in a reality with a bunch of other expressions. So, like, when you walk past a garden and you see all these trees and flowers, whatever, those are all different expressions. When you walk into a train station or airport or bus stop and you see a bunch of people, those are all different expressions. So he's saying that the light force itself goes through this transition of limitless to limitation. But however, the light force that is limited and the light force that is limitless are not the same, although they function together. Right? They function together, but they're not the same. So it says, Ukin halakti vekalakti kulu. It says, Hagivor. Masad Amanda Shehu the Shole Oto. Similarly, the limitless includes limitations and boundaries in the sense that it is in their very indignation that this is the way in which the spherot exists in the Ein Sof, blessed be He, for the entire way in which now He acts within the body of in limitation. So he's saying we're talking about the idea of the spherot, life force of the endless world coming into this world, going through this transition. But he's saying in the same way, the Ein Sof itself is a transition between the endless lights of the totality of the endless light and the reality of the Ein Sof. And so the Ein Sof is now within the Ein Sof is another collapsing type reality, which is the reality of the Ein Sof into this finite reality that we're in. For the entire way in which he now acts within boundaries and limitations is already conceived on the plane of limitless as a hypothetical possibility that was, however, negated by his very limitlessness. If so, the finite existed in the infinite as a hypothetical possibility. He says, when the Ein Sof wanted his eccentric limitless not to be not to touch this part, it came into being in a way that exists within limits. So God created separation. You go to any Orthodox shul, and you're going to see a separation between men and women. And sometimes people, ah, sometimes people, they want to take that and they want to say, oh, it's sexist and it's this, and you know, women in the back, care about women, this type of thing. But there's an idea of separating energies, right? And and especially separating energies in divine service. But we're seeing here that the energy that is expressed in this world in terms of separation, right? When God tells us to separate from women in the opposite sex, and only deal with it in a specific way, like almost like it's a form of divine service, no? You can only approach your wife at certain times. She has to be your wife. It has to be understood. But we could see here that this same mechanism of separation between energies exists in the heavens, right? It's the way that the physical world is designed, right? There's a separation between energies, right? And in the same way, when it comes to man and woman, right? Or other energies. I mean, it's all types of energies. I mean, there's foods that we separate from. You know, um, there's foods that we separate from. There's all types of things that, um, um, there's all these separations. So where does this idea of separations come from, right? We're seeing here that this idea of separation, this is how the universe is designed and be there. It's not you can't look at the lenses of because it's just that's just not what it is. We're in a reality as it manifests in its physical selves during certain times because we're energies. No matter how the world wants to dumb us down and make it seem like we're just these bodies, we're extensions of apes, chimpanzees. We're divine lights that come from that physical body that maybe have similarities, right? Arms, legs, Keep going. We'll keep going. Okay. So anyway, so we're going in this dynamic of energies, and we're seeing how it's slowly manifesting into this physical world from this concept, which is the Torah. This is the home run in this whole conversation, right? Because a lot of the capitalistic conversations start where we're at right now, the Simpson. Everybody starts at the Simpson. And God wanted to share even further than I've heard. Maybe someone says different. I don't know. But all the understandings I understand from the Kabbalah, I've never heard this particular build to it. And I think the genius of this book probably couldn't have explained because they didn't use his method. This is the thing. Ki hele hadevrek hamugivil. So he says, this is quite simple. For the pathway of limitation is conceived by the Ein Sof, except that at the level in which he conceives it, it is beyond limits and boundaries because his eccentric limitless sways and brought it back to this level, which is beyond limitations. However, when the Ein Sof, blessed be He, removed his limitless. This is the constriction. When he removed his limitless from it, it remained, and he conceived it prior to the removal of his limitation, except that now it was an actual creation, as opposed to the hypothetical possibility. Thus, the prior Simsun, the spheros were included in it, which is, so he said, wow. Okay, so the spheros were included in the Ein Sof, which is the first inference made above. However, on the level they exist, not in the way they exist now, but in a different way, which was a limitlessness. This is the second inference made above. I want to understand it, but I want to just read more. Yira. So he said this yira. Okay, so he says, and in a way it appears in the prophetic visions of the Ein Sof, blessed be he constricts himself in one place, leaving a place void of him. This expresses how the work of creation is revealed in the aspects of limitation is removed. Wow. Jeez. Wow. Okay, so you have in prophecy, you have this idea of seeing and you have this idea of understanding, right? So he's saying that this idea of seeing and understanding can translate to the idea of the transition from the endless reality in the world that we live in today, right? So he's using that as a frame of reference. Chill. Oh wow, great, excellent. Okay, so the so we're in that transition, right? In the same way that a prophet has a prophecy, he sees it, and then there's a process of understanding. He's saying in that same situation, in that same gap, there's this idea of the spiritual world and that transition. Now he's saying before it transitions from spiritual to physical, there had to be an intent. There had to be an intent. So which you're going to separate, right? We talked about the bowl of cereal. So I decided to make I thought it out and said, hey, you know what? I'm going to separate this part of the cereal, and then the rest of the cereal is going to be there. So he's saying that thought process was one form of the Simpson, and then there was another thought process. Then there was another aspect, which was the actual transition itself. Does that make sense? So all right. So he says Ein Zeh. So he says in a way that it appears in the prophetic vision in the Ein Sof, blessed be he. He contracts himself in one place, leaving a place void for him. Right. This expresses how the work of creation reveals the aspects of limitations. Chalak, so this is the third part. Chalak gimel chalak below derek. So he's saying he's going on. He says, so he's saying like this. We'll see how far we go into this. Okay. All right. I think we'll go. We're good. We'll finish it. Okay. So he says He says an adopted path of limited action is called Simpson construction. Just 1 second, I'm almost finished. He said constriction action of the Ein Sof, right? He says this includes the Simpson that is not only a matter of absence of limitlessness. The Simpson itself is a realm of barriers and limitations of beings. The Simpson causes the disappearance of limitless. Wow. Maintains the boundaries and limits beings and in the realm of limits and boundaries whereby the lies of the roots of din of judgment. So this whole idea of Yitzhak, right? This idea of Gevurah, right? This idea of limitations. He's saying an idea. He's saying the Simpson itself is a ram that expresses itself. How? Because it creates a mechitza, a separation between the other lights of the Ein Sof, right? So the other lights of Ein Sof are in this frame of constriction, and this is the frame of the Ein Sof. And then he's explaining that this frame of the Ein Sof is a constriction of the constriction. The first constriction is that the Shem says that there's a limitation, that there's going to be a limitation. Then the second constriction is the expression after it creates its own place, then expresses of. That's the second constriction. It says Yish Chalaku Shadaim Asmi Sun Hasim Sun. Sorry. He says one may object in the Simsun is merely a departure of an aspect of limitation, a matter of indignation. How can the Simsun possibly sustain or maintain anything in being? He said the answer is that the will that wanted the revealed thing in actuality rather than remaining in a mere hypothetical possibility, which brings all this about. So he's saying the creator's will is why the mechanism of the Simpson works, which he wanted to reveal his limited power. Accordingly, he removed his aspect of limit. He wanted to show how infinite he was by removing an aspect of his limitlessness from it. If so, it is the act of the Simpson that actually sustains in beings the limited realm revealed through it. So he's saying that because Hashem had this plan for this reality that we're limited, that's limited, because he had this plan for us, the system itself maintains itself. This realm is revealed in accordance to his will through the removal of the aspect of limitless in the place of the Simpson. And he says, this is the last point, we're finished. He says, the way this appears in a vision is that the place that remains contracted after the act of the Sissun, the root of the judgment is revealed. The root of the judgment, just outside of the it says the root of the judgment is revealed, and this is what maintains in existence throughout the Simpson. Okay, so wow, right? So just the sum it up a little bit, if we can, right? Is that we're getting the personality of the Simpson, right? Like, what is this idea? One, we understand it's a constriction. One, we understand that there's multiple constrictions on how it reveals itself, right? And this idea of understanding at these levels is, he's correlated to prophecy, right? The prophet sees the vision and he understands it, right? So you have this understanding that there is a structure, and then that structure transitions itself to experience, right? This is the understanding. So now we understand the Simpson. Now, again, the most important part, and this is what the Ramchal is bringing that other people I have not, like we learned Rabbi Ashлаг's introduction, many other people's introduction. I haven't seen this aspect. I'm sure maybe you can find the Zohar, maybe the Ari. The Ari is very difficult for me to understand. So maybe someone at a much higher level could go through it. But what the Ramchal is saying at a level I can understand it is giving me a blueprint of how to walk across the bridge, right? And the bridge is that the physical world is an expression of the Torah. How? Because the mechanism of the Sinsum is a mechanism of the supernal Torah, which is an expression of the 22 categories of light, right? That we understand as letters. And his categories of lights that come to us letters fully manifest itself in names, And these names are called our divine names, and these divine names make up the book of the Torah. The book of the Torah is in Shemaim, is in the heavens. We've been able to connect to it, but we have to understand the physical world that we live in is an expression of the Torah, right? Is an expression of the Simsun is an expression of the Torah. Is the different lights of the Torah, right? And so that understanding is saying that everything that we see around us is an expression of the supernal Torah. Now we have the Torah of Elam Hazeh, where we read it. This you have the stories, Exodus, this, Mishkan, the Book of Levim, all these things, right? But we understand it as stories. Oh, I'm reading a story. Wow, I'm reading this. Wow, wow. We read, some Rashi. Okay, it's a little bit deeper. We read some more commentaries. Wow, Drash, blah blah blah. And then we go deeper. Wow, Kabbalah, this. Wow, wow, deep. Wow, this is so deep. No, what the Ramchal is saying is that the letters inside of the Torah, the names inside of the Torah, are divine names that are the blueprint of all the created things in this reality. And so as we read the Torah, as we learn the Torah, we connect to the DNA of creation. And that's how a person can remove judgment from themselves from this world. This is how a person could cleanse themselves in this world. This is how a person could transform themselves in this world, because the Torah itself is the DNA of our existence. It's the DNA of the physical world. It's even the DNA of the sins that we created. And so we could transform everything from Ra to Tov. That's what we have, right? And that's what. So you guys, please jump in some points, because I'm giving another class soon here in the house. Not like a personal type of share, but we're giving it here. So you guys, please jump in.
Baruch Hashem, yeah, it's this is beautiful because this gives us a framework to understand so much of the Torah, and to really have a deeper understanding of how we are to function with it. One thing that stands out to me is just that level of restriction that the I want to make sure I'm saying it right. The suman, the Sasuman, is producing as a
Simsun,
mechanism.
Simsun, Simsun.
Simsum.
Yes,
Simsum. Okay,
yes.
Simsum.
Which
All
means
right.
constriction. Exactly.
Which means constriction. Okay. Well, that constriction, what it represent, what it stood out to me about was just the whole idea of set apartness. About being set apart. Giving the true essence of set apartness, that you have some that are in the world, people that's in the world that have been commanded to be set apart, but not just set apart, but to be set apart like Hashem is set apart. That creates a holiness in the earth, but it also creates a void in the earth too, because where the set apart are not, then there's a void there. And so wherever we are not present, there's an absence of basically of the manifestation or the manifesting of Hashem's presence, because the people around, they don't know, they're not called to do that. So it's our job to show the world this in every part of the world that we can. And so bringing set apartness to I guess I can't even frame it in words, man. It's powerful. But Baruch Hashem.
Yeah, Baruch Hashem. And I'm glad you pointed out the idea of Israel also being set apart, right? The idea of Israel also is this idea of separation, right? Along with man and one, but the idea of Israel being separated. So we can see now everything that we're doing in the physical world is only mimicking what we see, what exists in the heavens. Oh, to know, you got anything?
Yeah. I can't go too far into it because I'm in the office. But one thing I wanted to say was that very last part kind of explains in a way why when we opened up Better Sheets in the very beginning, why Elohim is used, why the aspect of Elohim is the progenitor of creation. You know what I mean? And it's amazing that it's being broken down in this way, that the dean of it, the judgment of the creation, has a set limitation to it. So um you can go past that by connecting to the Torah, and you see that why this world is only going to be a set amount of time. It's really mind-boggling. And Rob, I'm gonna send you some more stuff later. Because of Hashem that on some of my thoughts on it, but this is on a whole different level, and like Baruch Hashem for this.
I mean, so we're on the same page. We're pushing forward. But Hashem would do like a little smooth before Shabbos. But it's important to review the other chapters, right? Because we want to make sure we're clear on all the steps.